May 7th, 1896, AD, the execution of H.H. Holmes. On May 7th, 1896, AD, American con artist and murderer H.H. Holmes was executed for the murder of Benjamin Pitezel. He was 34 years old. Holmes made a career out of swindling, insurance fraud, check forgery, horse thievery, multiple marriages, and eventually murder. He was a habitual liar who made exaggerated claims about killing over 27 people and was at one time possessed by the devil. But he was only convicted of one murder. He was born Herman Mudgett on May 16, 1861. He got married at the age of 17 in 1878 and graduated from Michigan University School of Medicine in 1884. Holmes was an angry dude who was violent and cruel to his first wife, who left him before he graduated. Holmes worked as a hospital orderly and as a druggist before getting involved with a bunch of scams and illicit activities. He changed his name to Henry Howard Holmes to avoid the long arm of the law. Duke got married a second time and later applied for a divorce from his first wife. I guess he didn't know how the marriage law works. In 1886, after bouncing around the East Coast and Midwest, he settled in Chicago using the name Dr. H.H. Holmes. A year later, he purchased an empty lot and constructed the so-called Murder Castle on it, which was a mixed-use building. He ripped off investors who helped raise the money for its construction and then refused to pay the construction crew. Over the years, stories about Holmes using the building as a hotel to lure his victims into it to murder and torture them was nothing more than an exaggerated yellow journalism hokum. He was more of a sleazy guy who stole corpses from graves and sold them to medical schools rather than an evil psychotic psychopath from an 80s shot-on-video B-movie. The media at the time treated the building like it was some horrific mausoleum which housed a dungeon from hell, a vault, and a crematorium and other odd rooms, like the Winchester House, but it was nothing more than a boring, multi-purpose three-story building, which mysteriously burned down in 1895. During his time in Chicago, Holmes and others claimed he had killed 12 people. He admitted to the accidental death of one of the victims, Julia Smythe, due to a botched abortion, even though he wasn't medically skilled to perform a dangerous procedure. He also claimed to have poisoned her young daughter Pearl to keep her mother's death a secret. During his residency in Chicago, Holmes met the man who would become his right-hand henchman, fellow scumbag Benjamin Pitezel, an ex-con carpenter who helped out Holmes with some of his dirty deeds. With several insurance companies and broke investors chasing him around town with lawsuits, Holmes left Chicago for Texas in July of 1894. He tried to build another multi-purpose building, but couldn't rip off enough investors to have it completed. During that time, he was arrested in Missouri for trying to sell mortgaged goods. While locked up in St. Louis, Missouri, he met Marion Hedgepeth, the Derby Kid, and asked him if he knew a criminal lawyer who would help him swindle an insurance company out of $10,000 by putting a life insurance policy on himself and faking his own death, and offered him $500 for his services. Hedgepeth gave him the name of Jephthah Howell, who helped him file the policy, but the insurance company saw right through Holmes' scheme and refused to honor it. Holmes met up with Benjamin Pitezel and asked him to participate in the life insurance scheme by putting a policy on him and having him fake his own death. He agreed to it, using the name B.F. Perry, and the two were going to stage a laboratory accident, but Holmes killed him instead. After he collected the $10,000 for killing Pitezel, he told his wife that her husband was hiding out in England and convinced her to let him have custody of 3 of her 5 children. Holmes took custody of Alice and Nellie and forced them into a trunk and killed them by drilling a hole in it and placed a gas hose inside, choking them to death. He killed the 3rd child, Howard, by drugging him and cutting his body into tiny pieces before burning it in a chimney. On November 17, 1894, he was arrested by Pinkerton detectives in Boston with his 3rd wife, trying to flee the country. Holmes made a full-page confession to the press, which Hearst Papers paid him $7,500 in 1895 money. He also spun some wild tales about his murder castle and multiple killings of people who are somehow still alive. H.H. Holmes was tried and convicted for the murder of Benjamin Pitezel and was sentenced to death by hanging. But before he died, he requested his body be buried 10 feet deep in cement. It took him 20 minutes to die because the hangman's noose didn't break his neck, and he slowly strangled to death.